Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. All right, let's get into it. The title is very interesting. I would say one of the most interesting titles I've ever come to. Uh, who owns your name? Usually when you look at somebody who owns something, it's the name that owns it, right? But who owns your name? Which everybody uses their name to own stuff, you know? That means who owns yourself, you know? So when I looked at this sentence, who owns your name, I kind of broke it up. And I saw that we have the who and the name being separate. There's something unique in language where we say my mind, where we say my body, where the person says my soul, my dreams, my awakenings, you know. But who is the owner of a cosmic event? So what that means is, do you own the name? Does your name own, like for example, I'll give you an example. For example, my real name is Amin, Amin, and it's as if me wondering, is Amin, does Amin own Amin? Do you see what I mean? We reach a sort of paradox where we notice the abstraction that we have held on to. So who owns your name? That who is not a name. So there is a who in every person's life. There is a presence to the experience, or to the there is an personalized experience of a very general impersonal existence. When I think about the cosmos, you think that man can own outer space? That means it's like there could be this kind of even mindset that if extraterrestrials came onto Earth, they would be like, what makes you human beings think that just because you're living here, this is your place? Imagine. So when we go to the concept of ownership, to the concept of names, I mean, this is something so important that I'm going to just uh, explain. I'm going to read for you how the dictionary defines this. So when you go to a name, a word or set of words by which a person or thing is known, addressed, or referred to. The name is just a reference point. It's just the reference. But we take our names so seriously, as if they are us, as if we have an individualism. We have, as Terence McKenna says, built a civilization. Um, I don't remember his exact words, but he was saying something in the lines of like, all of civilization is held by small mouth noises. All the meaning, all the explanations, all the stories you have ever heard, language. Language is a simulation which we are trying to find reality through, but it will be impossible. You cannot use. I'm trying to think how I can word this. What I'm trying to say is, when we wonder about who owns your name, the name is owning the who. That means who we think we are is based on the language that has colored just mere existence, you know? That means the whole discussion of are we experiencing Earth on Earth? This is a very deep, I could say, metaphysical discussion. That are we here or are we somewhere else and we are experiencing here? It's this question. Usually the titles I tend to make them more multidimensional, but this who owns your name? I don't know, like there's something about the sentence that ends up uh, with just a view. When I think about who right now owns all the ideas I'm sharing, I'm just a part of nature making noise. Do you know? That means the owners of the realm are abstract. So you see, even the notion of God, where certain people entertain. It's like if we make the God, it's like this may sound like a very, of course, controversial sentence, but it's as if what if God is there but is not the owner? What if man's mind trying to own God? What if it was an effort in the 6th century where a human being was like, where did I come from? Oh, people. Where did the world universe come from? People. And back in the day, parents owned their children. Now parents now it's different, of course, but back in the day it was literally like the human beings weren't that sophisticated. Like sometimes people say that people, it wasn't just women, even kids were treated like objects back in the day you know What I mean by that is not like in person. I mean in the sense of like the father being like, I got like 10 kids, you know? They're all like just kids, kid one, kid two, kid three. Do you know? Of course, there is the more intimate relationship with the living being, but I'm saying it's like back in the day, there wasn't as much colored narratives as we have now. Life was simple. Like people back then were like, you know, I don't know, shepherds living in simple villages. A sort of new narrative to the cosmos was mind blowing to them. You see, we get excited, the species gets excited over possibility. And honestly, I would say, I think what is drawing in an audience maybe to these talks is just the notion that it is possible to build an advanced civilization. Like it has different levels. I mean, first thing, you want to try to do something. Imagine you want to do something that you've never done, that has nothing to do with you. For me personally, let's say doing rare snowboarding tricks, you know like rare snowboarding trick. So I would see, like, of course, I'm not, I know how to snowboard, but I'm not that good. But I could totally see that if I was to attempt, it would have to be endless repetition. You got to get used to your own failure. You see, a lot of people are not used to their own failure, and they're not used to even others being used to their sense of failure. Do you know? Those who are, when they're young in their upbringing, they're dismissed. They get this sort of inner armor that you realize, so what the world cheered, so what the world criticized. You see, the events of life go on. After a point, it's not language that governs the value of the human being. If human beings raise their children where the child thinks only a certain language is itself, or it's only can identify with a certain language, you have not created a human being. Because to be human means a freedom to interpret the human experience in multiple ways. Any sort of ideological system that is closing your eyes before you have opened them, there is war. There is war of the sages, I am telling you. It's like Of course, the whole notion of war is unwise, but there was responsibility which changed things. You see, that means somebody who attacks a kingdom, they're starting war. The lords of karma have plans for them. But those people who have to defend their kingdom, they are not starting their war. They're not starting the war. There is something, there is the karma to the moment. I'm telling you, most human beings have experienced this. You know, I'm 100% sure people can say it in the chat section. But people have experienced moments where they've wanted something too quick, or they've assumed they had something too quick, and when the moment came, the karmic the karmic, what's the term? The karmic. Oh man, I'm remembering it. I'm I'm remembering the term in Farsi, but I can't remember it in English. Equally distribute, that's the word I was looking for. Karma is distributed differently based on your psychology. You see, most people think karma is like cause and effect. I do something, then something good's gonna happen, yay. You know, I did something bad, oh no, something bad's gonna happen. But let me tell you, there is a karma in regards to seeing your life as a line. Then there is a sort of interpretation of karma where every point of that line has its own karma. So imagine every moment where you were just a mere self, there was a world there. You know, we're not just our senses of self just changing throughout the years, celebrating our birthdays. When the self changes, Hiva says, what is it in Farsi? Pakhsh kardan, you know, to distribute, you know. But pretty much the point of the whole karmic thing is that if you have to judge the karma. That means it's like, does the action have a karma the moment you do it? Does the action have a karma even previous to the thought of it? What the hell is this even karma? Who's driving this vehicle of karma? Who owns your name? Does the world own this self, or does the self own the world? Right now, like you could say, in evolutionary phase, the world moved us. Man didn't raise himself, the planet raised us. Do you know? That means I have parents in this life, my human parents. But when I look at the evolution of my species, the parents of my species is the planet. It's the planetary effort. There is something going on. Can you imagine? We were a bunch of people just on an empty rock, no trees, no greenery, no animals, no grass, no geometry, not geometry, but no details. Do you know, we are blessed to have access to a realm of geometric detail. And hence, I think karma is really a geometrical relationship, you know? There was a moment where there's these stairs I often sit. I don't know why. Sometimes I think in stairs. When I sit on stairs, like in a stairway, and I just think, you know, or any stairs. There's something about stairs where they're trying to be chairs. It's like a staircase can seat, you know, a bus. That's the power of a staircase, you know. It's literally like a mini auditorium. But really, I was sitting in the staircase and I was thinking. I was thinking about the, not thinking per se about this thought. I was just looking at the moment. And I realized karma is so real. It can be even measured. I feel there will be AI programs. Okay, guys, the streaming software is back. Sometimes gives errors. Um, I continue from this point that we are having a strangely separate relationship with language. We have a separate relationship with matter. What that means is pretty much the game of knowledge is divided between objects and subjects. That means that when you think about what knowledge for the human species is, it's just familiarity with objective mobility and subjective mobility. There is no one picture to rule them all of how things are known in this realm. The more human beings discover that it's multidimensional, it means they have to look at new dimensions of self. Kind of like how Einstein says you can't solve a problem from the same state of consciousness that created it. What does that mean? That means you need new eyes if you want to see something new. So the new novelty brings with itself the wisdom of its own eyes. And novelty is a suggestion that the world is changing. That means the person has noticed the world is changing before the self. If the you will most likely feel either like a god, or you are so behind the realm you don't exist to yourself. It has to do with speed, a lot of psychology. Sometimes even looking at the notion of how they're diagnosing, for example, autism, and certain diagnosis, I realize we don't know enough to diagnose, which is strange. Like I feel no psychologist, there isn't that much certainty, because the human being's dimensions, if they transcend the limits of language, all psychology is limited to the literature. When you want to learn something, you go and see what people have said about it before, how that idea is born. That's kind of like the value of philosophy. Philosophy makes you an incredible questioner. Do you know that means philosophy expanded my horizons by seeing different things, but science was actually how you get to the horizons. So there is a balance of different intentions and different modes of attention. Right now, the person just says, "Yeah, I'm little old me. I'm just this name." We go throughout the day not realizing that it's like micro, again, dots that are macro line. So it's like various multiple events. When a person becomes emotional, it took me a while to notice this, by the way. It wasn't emotions for me were I mean, I have certain insights. Everything I know, I never consider I fully know. I just consider I know this far. I have seen this far of it. Because in that standpoint, it's not that the person knows or doesn't know. We don't play that game of the critic anymore. We realize every person has to reanimate outer meaning at a faster speed. That means if literally there is, let's say, a wild animal in a dangerous forest situation, you have to make calculations faster than the animal, even in street fights. Even in fights, like, I mean, of course, a human being shouldn't fight. As Isaac Asimov says, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. But let's say you have no choice. Let's say you were back in the day and there was a thug in your village. Do you know? Imagine there was a thug in your village, and the person had to do something. So here's the thing. Most people think chaos is power. The West has a very negative view on power, as if it is an attitude. Power has to do with awareness. Go and ask any entrepreneur who's successful. They notice something earlier than the rest of the people. That's how they won. It's like the game of life. If we are multidimensional beings, then only seeking a green paper becomes pretty stupid, no? If you were a multidimensional being. You know, if there were different, if there was more than just an objective dimension to you, then living just an objective life is like, it doesn't make sense, right? Because the more dimensions you're aware, the more room in your inner realms you're filling. I mean, that's the thing about the scholarly mind, I find, that after a point, you're not learning. There's no such thing as learning. It's inner landscape perception. It's what you're seeing. When you see, I mean, like, people can't see me now because this is a podcast, but in if you go see some of the videos I have, even any human being, just start looking at people when they speak on in YouTube videos, wherever, in news, whatever, you'll see when a person speaks, actually perceiving their overlay of their inner realm upon their outer realm. This is why the eyes move. That means sometimes when if out of curiosity, were people hearing me so far? The last 10 minutes, were people hearing me? All right, guys, I don't know. Okay, okay, nice, nice. Okay, thanks, people in the chat section. Okay, nice. Yeah, so if we are not just an object, then even as a tactician, strategy, someone who's considering strategy, it can't be the right strategy. You know, this is why mystic, the way the intellect looks at the illiterate, is the way the mystic looks at the intellectual. They are illiterate of the language of direct experience. You know, we have thought we have to choose one side of the coin. We are all raised and conditioned under the impression that we're singular. And of course, we have to be for now in this phase of history because language hasn't evolved. We don't have a multidimensional language. So, guys, because my stream software is a bit strange today, whoever likes, if I'm not audible for more than like 5 minutes, I mean, that's too long, but more than like a full minute, you know, let's say 2 minutes or something, like, then definitely say something, please. Because sometimes I focus on on the talk, I uh, don't click the mute button sometimes, you know. Conditioned as one room of a house, now we're realizing, no, 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 we are the whole house, and all the rooms in the house can be applied, you see. So the thing is, think of it this way. You see how phones are getting more and more intimate? Like when I was young, I remember the old school Nokia phones. They would call it a gushkub, like in Iran, they would call it like a brick, okay, like a hammer for crushing food. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like, and so the object became closer and closer, and eventually the phones in the future could be just waves. That means you no longer need to have any technological object around you. You know, it's happening from a distance, or your whole the technology. Okay, is it can people hear me? I think it's back. Um, anyways, words are incarnating into the moment. Human beings are incarnating into a world. We are appearing in the void. We are the void's greatest invention yet. We are nature's masterpiece. That means in such a macrocosmic thing, like, it's funny when you look at an ant in a yard, you move like a giant rock and you see a tons of ants underneath. Okay? And for us, it's like we don't need to remove the rock. It's like it's just bunch of ants are on the rock. Like there's so many mysteries in this world. There could be inner earth civilizations. That could be a potential. Do you know? There could be like in one talk I remember suggesting that the center of the earth was in another dimension. As if this whole universal sector is kept by some other universal sector. Like the Milky Way galaxy could be the hallucination of the Andromeda galaxy, poetically speaking. So many things in life, they have a value for some time, then you have opportunities to engage or not engage, to care or not care, and then it passes. That means if I didn't care to speak, then there would be no content. So it's the same thing in life, where you have to care to move. And so if the human being is really based ideologically, you get wounded by language quick. Okay? What that means is, if, like, I'll give you an example. Imagine I think I'm like, you know, imagine I think to myself, like, I'm the nicest person. Or, and then suddenly when somebody comes up, imagine I'm walking in the street and somebody comes up and says, "You're not nice." And I'm like, "Oh no." Imagine I start, like, breaking down inside. It's because I identified with a language that became a punching bag. And I'm telling you, if you realize you're not the language of your life, yet you are such an advanced creature. Noam Chomsky has so many lectures on this. Just the whole thing that's separating human beings from animals is it's our sophisticated usage of language, the way we wear concepts. The mind, it's like the body wears clothing, the mind wears, like the naked mind is clothed by invisible subjects. Do you see what I mean? So what's going on is that if we think if causal, from the causal point, let's say there's two phases to something, the cause and the effect, pretty much 1, 2, or 0, 1. It doesn't get, like, that's the most basic. Okay, so we have the causal point and then we have the effect, right? For example, the Big Bang is a notion. Of course, now the ideas have changed from the first time Richard Dawkins, sorry, not Richard, Stephen Hawking proposed it. See, it was this notion that from emptiness, bang, suddenly a universe exploded. And it wasn't emptiness, it was a pool of energy or something. Now, it's like the scientific mind is entertaining if universes have parents, if there are parent universes. Do you know if there are sister universes, sibling universes? Do you know? The advantage of man is, because we're aware of the macro, because we're aware of the micro, we can only apply the micro to the macro. That's our part. We are here to notice our simple humanhood and then function in a cosmic event. Guys, it's not still silent, right? People are hearing me. It shouldn't be still silent. I mean, silence doesn't go anywhere in a mystical context, but and that's the cool thing. We give meaning to sound, so silence is meaningless truth. This is why in mysticism, in meditative practices, in wisdom traditions, if the person hadn't understood the experiential significance of silence and stillness, they had no idea what they were doing with words and noises. Because let me tell you, it is actually correct and intuitively on point that this world is meaningless. Let me tell you why. because the meaning is not from here. The meaning, the input, think of it this way. The mind is playing a video game, and the video game character is the physical body. Now the person, the mind, is seeing the character, the video game character, right? When a person plays the video game, they're moving the will of the character, the will of the body is the will of the person playing it, right? But the person who's playing the video game is not made of pixels. Do you see? So if we identify with our body and life is a simulation, we have made a flaw, we have made an error. So materialism can be an error if greater intelligence is hiding in immaterial states. And it's as simple as that. I am telling you, all of knowledge, the educational systems, it's more like, honestly, like hotels. Universities they're going to become hotels in the future, probably. Can you imagine universities having these giant hotel establishments on top of them, and celebrities who want to study at that university, they come and rent, like, homes there, or they come into there, or people who come visiting the school, the school has a hotel attached to it. Do you see what I mean? It's an enterprise. There's no such thing as school. School is a hoax. The universe is your school. Your eyes are your teacher. And when you realize this, you liberate yourself from something outside of you needing to move you before something from within can. Because mortality is the greatest inspiration. They asked this person, imagine they went up to this person and they were like, how did you accomplish your greatness? How were you motivated? How did you do this? And the person was like, I realized it's going to break. The engine I have to be mobile and advanced civilization will one day stop working. We are biological engines, yet we're biological engines driven by something that is not engineered like the engine. Do you know? It doesn't mean necessarily the soul is shapeless. No. I got just rewind. It doesn't. I mean, what I'm saying is, it doesn't mean what appears to us as a soul transmigrating could be just a higher dimensional pebble on the road. Do you know? It could just be like a small bush of a higher dimension. So that's the thing. Scale. And people suffer because the scale of their desires compared to the scale of the ability they have to actually have the desire, they don't match. So if you want more than you can actually do anything with, it's like, even if the lords of karma, if there were such a thing, the lords of karma would be like, all right, so when's this guy going to figure out, he's desiring something he has no need for. So that's the thing. I would say, before a person gets rid of their desires, they should try to find their most important desires. That means before the person goes like, all right, I'm going to get rid of everything, every desire, before we all become like a super Jainist. But I'm just saying, like, I realized even not wanting to have a desire is like a desire. It's about an energetic handling, and that means you're literally handling your energy as a phenomena in the moment. That means imagine if you were on a species, your body was jello. You had to be handling that jello mobility. You know what I mean? Imagine you were in a species where it was just pure it was like the AI, I'm telling you, don't think if humanity makes AI, don't think our civilization has seen the biggest version of AI. That means, imagine poetically, or I could say, theoretically and physically, it's like the parallel dimensions to the moment. So imagine in this AI, imagine there's infinite parallel dimensions to the Earth, and we see the outcome. We create AI, and AI, imagine, is like, oh, human beings, you guys are like bad creatures. I'm going to take over. Imagine we experience a narrative, which pretty much Terminator was on these lines, where I'm pretty much saying there is other dimensions to everything. That means technically there isn't one Mona Lisa painting. There is as many people, as many unique dimensions to that painting. Every person saw a different painting. For every person, their color, their taste, just like how if not every human being likes the same food. It's like not everybody likes the same, inner realm method. So when we realize, like, that's the thing, Shirin Sargadad Maharaj says, diversity without separateness is the ultimate, the ultimate the mind can touch. What does that mean? That means the most ultimate position, technically based on that quote, I would say would be where every person is advanced and able as an individual, but we have so mastered our individual living that now we're just living silently and collectively, but any moment we can bring the advancement of the individual. So it's literally battles. Right now, it's like some people need to go and, in some sense, have incredible dialogues with their nations. You see, war is the most incompetent outcome. War meant brains couldn't figure it out. Hands had to get involved. That's the issue. If we can somehow find some sort of algorithm as a collective ethos to implement, to make the civilization not wake up, because you don't, it's like every day you wake up, you know. For me, it's like there's no such thing as an awakening coming. Every moment is your awakening. You are awake and it's happening. That truth everyone is seeking, it is happening. The only way I have managed, I am telling you, like certain ways you can, I can look at my life and be like, all right, I've managed to, exceed at a certain discipline. But so many areas of my life, that before there was discipline, there was the wilderness of the uneven, the wilderness of the odd decisions of the psychology. That means, who are you before you are a who? You know? That means, excuse my language, but who the fuck was Doctor Who? Literally, like, who? Who's the doctor? And you guys might not believe it, but the word who, the sound HU, is a mantra. Is a mantra where in the Sufi tradition, they say who. They just literally say who, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes I think even sounds entering the ear of a person have a karmic filter. It's as if like we're not just the jurisdiction of names and bodies. We are the jurisdiction of the intelligent activity of the moment. Like if we really take that in, it would be this cool time where man experienced the artificial life, and now only the real life is left. The artificial is become boring. Something that people don't realize, that the entertainment, you see it in entertainment. You know, I studied film, and you know what I realized? The world doesn't know what it's doing. That's what I realized. I realized that poor souls are not realizing that the wealth of this world is novelty. And there's two types of novelty. There is a lifeless novelty where you're just taking, it's like an archaeologist finding something and suddenly sharing that. But then there's a type of novelty where it's literally feels like you are alone on a universal island. If you were on a universal island, you would have such an intensity in trying to figure things out that you will forget the teachers. You'll be like, they're too slow. That means I like students who, in some sense, to a certain role that never need to be taught. Those are my favorite students. Students who their eyes are their teacher. I'm telling you, what else can it be? We never see the other person's mind. We see their body and the communication that comes from that uh, mountain, from that realm. So, an advanced civilization, let's take it there, as time will. That it is the part of the blessing and the karma of the planetary sector. Our expression, our performance has a value not just for us, but for people who haven't been born yet. We have a value for non-existence. That means I don't know how non-existence is really empty. For me, this life is really like you open your eyes and you move. That's it. You move or you're moved. That's it. You either implement a conscious, you live consciously, you actually look around and care for how things are, and after you care a lot for your inner realms, you develop your style, and that's a beautiful moment. You know, the style of a person is their voice before they needed one. It's their nature. That means, like, how many times in movies there you see, like, I mean, maybe not nowadays, but like in movies, you would see the kids like, I don't know what to do, and the uncle or some person who was there would be like, just be yourself, kid, you know? And the kid would be like, what do you mean, just be myself? You know? How can I be myself? Am I not being myself in this problem? And what that meant, be yourself, was realize you have a value before a shaped value. There is an experience going on here. That means I find it fascinating. People go into temples, and they worship deities. Literally, I mean, of course, it's not that that's wrong, but I'm just saying that level of playing with matter as if it's soul. It's literally like children in the sandbox thinking they're gods. This world is not a sort of linearity that can just break. When I was younger, I was intimidated by things changing. Now I see that's where the joy of life comes from. That's one of the most beautiful things, and it doesn't mean changing without holding on. It just means after stumbling a couple times, you have no choice other than to be your clarity. That's it. That's the last tea to drink, clarity. So we have reached this strange point as a civilization where we are taking ourselves super seriously on an objective level, and now with the type of political correctness, like the whole, um, like comedians in the West feeling like there's freedom of speech has been forgotten or something, you know, like it's like it's come to a point where I think the species is maturing. I mean, it's technically not maturing. It's like it was like 8 years old. Now it's 9, but it's more mature than before. You know what I mean? So you think I just read your comment? Do not uh, just smile at the chinks in the armor. So guys, I'm writing something in the chat section. Once you advance, the past is changed forever. The present is our home. The future is the beyond. You know, I would say we're probably going to have this. I mean, I attempted to create it in one talk, but I called it beyondism. You know, literally a person has become a beyondist. That means they're like, what do you believe in? There's like beyond belief, man. It's like it's like, what do you mean? It's like beyond everything. It's like, I just like the person just puts the word beyond everything, and they are endlessly wondering about what next, what next, what next, right? If we had no suffering, I wonder if people would ever care about the ego. Sometimes I wonder that. I wonder if there was nothing wrong, would we care to explore the realm? If we thought we knew everything, imagine right now, we thought we know everything in the universe, you know, and suddenly somebody found a secret door, a secret portal. Like that's what I mean. It's like you beyond the beyond, through the silent gate, language bows at the unknown experience. Sorry guys, needed to have a quick intermission there. I mean, we're seriously just breathing objects. I mean, that's unavoidable, the objective part. But we are aware of the object and we use language. So because language is pretty weird, we're like, okay, how are we doing this? You know, there's a hard problem of consciousness. Why even to some degree we're conscious of certain parts of our experience, but we're not. You know, that means so many things the person is unconscious of. Now imagine if you were unconscious of pain. Why has consciousness connected itself to the experience of pain? You know? So there's so much there. It's like right now people should stop fighting for over answers and beliefs. That's foolishness. Right now we're just exploring as 8 billion advanced communicators for questions. Right now it's the era of questions. Questions have become more important than the answers. Back then answers were important because people had few questions. But now there are so many questions and the answers can be so multidimensional and integrative. You know, it's a rare game, this world. And what can be said about language? It's a tool, it's a technology. So I think it has to be a system of events and experience. I think the next language could be just maybe a series of events. I mean, the phenomena of speech is an event, right? And then when a person speaks, they are creating an event inside an event. And when a person comments on their speech, it becomes an event in an event, commenting on an event, creating another event. Of course, the episodes that are questions, people in the comment section can attempt to answer the question. If the name has no owner, then language can't be owned by identity. If we move as a civilization beyond the concept of ownership, imagine everybody was so rich that you didn't need to own anything. You had everything. You know, would you have the concept of I own this, you own that? You know, so we have, of course, that's kind of like maybe like in 50 years we start thinking like that, but like it's actually an interesting question, because what would a advanced civilization without an owner look like? Because you can say language is owning people. I am telling you, when the person's waiting for their boss to communicate to them at work, it becomes a situation where it's literally like it, it's signal. It's like the whole antenna thing. An antenna can an antenna get owned by a signal it receives? That means, let's say in one moment I think I'm this kind of person. Can the whole life experience get owned by just that one reception of that signal or identification with that signal? If we treat the human being as an antenna, that technically means there's a way you can, kind of like those old school car antennas, you can move the antenna for it to get the proper signal. So what that means is that totally changes the game from seeking knowledge and going to school. It just makes it into kind of trying to explore the experiencer, the nature of it, right? And it's like now, I remember I was talking to someone about how do we bring an advanced civilization, and I told her that you have to find the common denominator, or you might be investing in a battle that has no reward. Right? So when I was thinking, like, how do you advance civilization? I'm like, what's the common denominator? What are the common denominators between all creatures? One common denominator is our species, okay? Another common denominator is, as Carl Jung said, the collective unconscious, the unknown, you know? Another common denominator, same planet. And then we have the same, you could put, right beside the planet, universe, fractalize uh, the shine out of it. So these are common denominators, but I remember I told her that it's language. Language is the main one. That means it's like they say, when you want to defeat like an army, don't fight the army. The fool fights the army. You know, the person just goes and sees where's the army's brain, right? Where's the brain of the situation, right? And then you choose to fight the brain, or in like ancient militaristic tactics, you got to cut the head of the snake. And what was that a metaphor for? That was a metaphor, in even Sun Tzu in The Art of War spoke about it, that once the general gets disconnected from the community, then the kingdom is conquerable. That means the more people hate their government and the government hates them, the easier we are to get conquered. An advanced and alien civilization could be like, look at these fools, let's go take their turf. You know what I mean? So that's the whole thing of ushering in an ethos where there's a new opportunity for the expression of psychology, right? Because we are psychological expression. I treat my life like to be honest, every day is like an artwork. Every day is like a canvas of opportunity, and I can choose how I move, right? And it's not like at first, maybe like for me, it was like 2011 was the moment where I noticed my inner realms. Then when you notice your inner realms, you start looking at how life is happening before opinion on the subjective context of, what you're exactly experiencing. So that means, like they say, the mind is loud. It's like an ancient sage saying. It's like the mind is a lousy master, but it's a great servant. But it's a good servant. Okay, what that means is your mind will master you if you identify with language. If you don't become responsible for your free will, there's no point of searching for freedom. Your freedom will at best be just non-dual nullification of all archetypes, like the person's, like, you know what I mean? It's literally like overreaction. That's what's going on with this. Spirituality can be an overreaction. you know they're like, hey man, how did you attain that ultimate samadhi state? And the person's like, life really freaked me out. So that's the thing. We have to, even if we didn't, like, that's why I'm saying, it's the notion of the future vision of what the advanced civilization would be has become like the king. And every person, member of a civilization, is not, you're not serving people. Don't, I mean, it is true, you serve people, but serve a kingdom. That means, you know what that means? That means if you're a waitress, or a waiter at a restaurant, and somebody behaves rudely to you, you behave professionally because you respect this place, the restaurant is. You don't descend to the level of the savageness. You know where you're standing, you know? And that has to be experientially remembered. Did you know you have to remember freedom? The person's like, how? How can I be free? How can I get out of this misery? And the person's like, yeah, man, you just got to remember you're not miserable. Who's miserable? Who is weak? Who is in some sense inefficient? That means for me, right now I'm at a certain state where I would say personally on myself, I don't have an ego. But for the developments of an advanced civilization, you know what that means? That means if somebody comes and says something to me personally, like a negative thing, I mean, the first thing is you make the problem non-existent. But of course, that could be too sudden, as I've learned. But if somebody said something about an advanced civilization, I would get offended about how and that's me personally, of course. Like it doesn't matter if I what I think, but I'm saying it's just that the intelligent it's not about just having intelligence in this life. There is an type of intelligence where I would say it's noticing intelligence, literally like the movie Transformers. The person sees something, they have extracted a new vision in their sphere of awareness, you know. I think that's the one of the rare ways that one can see this whole life existence as a supreme walk. Technically, a story can go on forever if where the immediate attention of the story is doesn't stop. That means life, technically, if we were immortal beings, it could have numerous meanings. Can you imagine right now if people imagine in my science fiction, I write that in the future there's this thing called immortal juice, okay, where people just drink this immortal juice and they don't die, right? And the juice is like a sensu being made into a drink, you know? If we were immortal, mortality would not define us. We would not be human. The human idea is a natural idea. If we move beyond that, then the reality is different. Our names are owned, our indirect linguistic names, language-based names. I mean, name isn't language, but our names are an indirect existence of a direct experience. So technically, we should feel we are sandwiched between imagination and reality as an attributeless witness. Yeah, that makes more sense. Where it was never just imagination and reality as a duality, where it was imagination, it was like you can say an inverted triangle, imagination and reality, the upper side, and the top, and they all come down to W, the witnessing dimension. I think it's about time we establish this on a very more serious level, that there is an witnessing dimension that makes the human experience appear as an unknown mind experiencing known body. So technically, it's weird. It's as if like our brains are working through signals, through waves, but our bodies are particles, you know? And then there is a view of both of them simultaneously. It's like, as Rumi would say, once you see that the chaos and order are codependent, then duality becomes like the wings of a bird. Do you know? When duality becomes like the wing of a bird, the person's attention is no longer, the bird doesn't think about its wings, it thinks about where its experience is going. It doesn't think about trying to bring only chaos and order. Like, I'll be honest, the main reason why I'm so keen on ushering in an advanced civilization is because it needs to be a better headquarters. We don't have decent headquarters as a human being, do you know? We need to have an advanced civilization. That's basic. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I've shared two links above at the top of the chat. I'm going to keep the chat on, and I will be in the public Discord server. Um, and the private, pretty much, I've kept for special events. So, yeah. So, thanks for listening, everyone. And when you wonder about your identity in the face of the abstract, it is reality looking back. Do not fear reality. Do not fear your imagination. Upon discovering their codependence, witness how this is nature's way of talking to the void, through the void. That it breaks things and builds things and breaks things and builds things. And trust me, there's been like some poetic writings of mine. They have been dedicated to me just talking to the planet. I haven't even written the poem for a human audience. I've written it for just the planet, as if I was alone on the planet. It was like my kind of conversations with the cosmos. And it's like I'm looking at a cloud right now, and I'm reminded by this quote from Rabindranath Tagore. He says, um, "Oh man, I don't remember it exactly. Let me check it." He says, "Clouds coming in, not ushering storm," but I don't remember the whole thing. So I'm gonna there we go. Clouds come floating into my life, no longer to carry rain or usher storm, but to add color to my sunset sky. Do you see? Life is not happening because forces are against you or forces are with you. It's just happening. And it's like how the mind opens up to the day. It has its own experiential elegance. There's some moments where I just go and I'm just sitting. I'm not even doing anything. I'm just simply sit. And I just notice how I'm simply alive. And that just, humblifies you when you notice you're just a creature. right? That's the most simplest manifest form of it. But then there's more inner, you can say internal objects, or as Kant would say, noumenon, or as Descartes would say, raison, res cogitans, cogitans. I don't remember exactly. But different philosophers that have turned their scope on language have noticed this, that there is an internal object, and the moment there's an internal object, that means there's an outer subject. An internal object is the proof of uh, the interdimensional beinghood on this in our world. So the gods are technically the proof that it's like a subject outside. So that means there's living subjects. That means you see how we are an object and we have subjects. Now imagine a being that is just space and is just identifying with the subject. You know what it is? If you notice, like if you put a cup of tea outside and you come like after a few days, you see it has completely been dominated by the environment and taken over. So there is this sort of notion that when I speak, I feel it's like these are echoes of a certain expression, but then I feel what happens to the echoes. You know, it's like the echo gives you a suggestion of how long the hallway is, you know. That means for me, this is what maybe we haven't considered about dolphins. The way they communicate is that their consciousness is the signal. So their mind, their attention moves with sound, is the sound. Right now, our attention can notice the sound differently, you know? So anyways, guys, I'll see you in the Discord server in a couple of minutes as I relocate. Thanks for listening. Blessings. And you are a presence beyond personality. The roar of experience is the dawn of our next existence, you know? Blessings.